Well, Happy New Year, everybody. We got a brand new show for you, and look at this, a brand new guest. First time ever. I want to say first time, long time. I assume he's listened to the show in the past, at least we hope. Penguins Director of Hockey Operations and Legal Affairs, Vukie Mpofu, joining us. Vuk, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on. And we'll dive a lot into the Penguins here over the next half hour, a lot to get to. But I kind of want to start it with you because you've been with the organization for a couple of years now. But for Penguins fans, this is really the first opportunity they get to meet you in person and hear from you. A lot of us have gotten to know you behind the scenes, but when people hear your name, they know exactly what you do because of your job title. But what kind of led you to the Penguins? What kind of take us through your career path to getting to Pittsburgh?
Sure. So I would say it kind of started. So I went to law school at UCLA. And so I was able to go there, and it was a little bit of a unique program, which is kind of what led me to go down there in the sense that they had a ton of sports entertainment opportunities. And so during my time in law school at UCLA, I had a chance to work for the athletic department there and do plenty of work with football, gymnastics. This was before the name, image, and likeness rules changed. And so we had to negotiate waivers for gymnasts to go on talk shows or whatever the case may be. And then during the summer after my first year, I had a chance to work for Rich Winter, an agent down in Edmonton. And after my second year, I did an internship with the Vegas Golden Knights. And so I had a chance to kind of get some experience on the player side of the business and on the team side. And I think after my experience with Vegas, I kind of knew that I was interested in working on the team side. And I think just the opportunity to be part of a group that's kind of pursuing the Stanley Cup was something that really appealed to me. And then when I was graduating from law school, I was fortunate that an opportunity came up to work with the LA Kings, around the time that I graduated. So I wrote the bar exam in California and then started working for the LA Kings in the summer after I graduated. And so I worked doing contract negotiations, salary cap, and general CBA expertise there. And then, 2 summers later, when Kyle took the job here in Pittsburgh, he called me and went through an extensive interview process with him, and then, ended up coming down here.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you here, and I know you and Kyle have quite a relationship. We'll get to that in a second, but you mentioned being a part of a team to go after a Stanley Cup, and eventually that is the goal here in Pittsburgh. But I'm sure at one point you thought you'd be on a team, potentially, to go win a Stanley Cup. You did play in the Western Hockey League for the Red Deer Rebels. Colby Armstrong, also an alumni. Yeah. Take us back through that. How did that kind of shape you, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, Colby Armstrong and myself, both Red Deer Rebels alumni. Colby actually played on the Rebels team, over 10 years before I was there, but on the team that won the Memorial Cup in 2001 in Regina. And both Colby and I are from Saskatoon, so there's obviously a connection there. But my time in Red Deer was really formative for me. Brent Sutter, who was the coach and GM of the team at the time when I was there, was a really great influence on me. I think playing for him helped me mature a ton and gave me a ton of skills that I would keep with me, beyond my time as a player, into my education, and then obviously into the role that I'm in now. And so, that was a tremendous experience for me. And obviously, there came a point when I realized I wasn't going to make it to the NHL as a player, and I needed to find another avenue to do so.
Yeah. So kind of going off that, a two-parter for you, I guess. Like, how did you decide? You mentioned your path and what you did to kind of lead you to the Penguins, but what was it about the cap and the CBA that kind of drew you into that realm of work? And Kyle obviously called you. I assume, maybe I'm wrong, that wasn't completely out of the blue. Did you have any previous relationship with Kyle or anything like that?
Yeah, so I think I was always very interested in the salary cap and, in contracts and stuff like that. We used to have, obviously, cap friendly was something that I sort of followed religiously. And, in my time working in LA, I had sort of made a habit of taking trips down to Toronto and Montreal to visit the NHL Central Registry Office, where, all the contracts are processed, where the daily salary cap numbers are calculated, and, just general compliance for each team is determined. And so, I had made a habit of making trips down to Toronto and to Montreal, just to ask them about gray areas of the CBA, edge cases, how the league might treat certain situations. And one of my trips, I ended up going to a morning skate to watch the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think Kyle saw me there, and then a little bit later, he came down to Los Angeles when the Leafs were playing in LA and stopped by our offices. So I had met him, once or twice, but my relationship with him obviously really started in a serious way when I started working here with the Penguins.
Well, we're happy you're aboard. That was a great hire by Kyle. Good work, Kyle. And thanks for spending some time with us. So we know a lot more now about Vukie the man. We'll learn a little bit more about his team, the Penguins, and what the recent transactions have been around this organization the last little bit. It's been a busy start to 2026 to Pittsburgh, and we're back with more after this.
Inside Penguins Hockey is back.
Let's go eat sushi.
For an all-new season.
And now he's your best friend.
Yeah. Getting a line in the water is always a joy for me.
Inside Penguins Hockey. New episodes every month on SportsNet Pittsburgh. Presented by UPMC Health Plan.
Welcome back. Well, it has been a busy week for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and really a busy start to 2026, but lots of wins in there, Vukie, as the team came out of the break, 5 straight wins. From a management perspective, what have you liked about the group's seeming turnaround out of that holiday break?
Well, I think one of the big things that we got kind of coming out of the Christmas break was Blake Lizotte was activated from injured reserve and rejoined our lineup. And so I think that gave the group a bit of a spark. Obviously, the Christmas break probably came at a good time for us. And since then, I think we've got offensive contributions throughout our forward group from all 4 lines. If you look at those 5 games, we've scored at least 4 goals in all of them, albeit one of them was really a 2-1 game with 2 empty netters. But we've gotten offensive contributions really throughout the lineup. So, it's been a really good run for our group. And, especially if you look at the last 2 games, the first one in Detroit, that was a really impressive 60-minute performance from our group. And, we took a 2-1 lead into the 3rd period and then gave up only 3 shots in that 3rd period. So that's sort of a game that you can kind of circle back to later on in the season as an example of what our group's capable of. And then the next afternoon in Columbus, the team goes down 4-1 early in the 2nd period, but just shows an incredible resilience and stick-to-itiveness. And, obviously getting that goal from Noel Acciari late in the 2nd period kind of ignites the group, and we were able to come back with 2 in the 3rd, and then Sid finishing it off in OT. So for that game, I think it's another one that you can circle back to later in the season in terms of just showing the character and the resilience of the group, and our ability to sort of stick with it through tough times there.
That game also marked the midway point of the season. That was game 41, and at the end of it, now granted things shift obviously in the ensuing games before you guys get back on the ice Thursday night against New Jersey, but after that game at game 41, you're tied for 3rd in the Metro. You're solidly in a playoff spot in the East, and I'm wondering how much that matches the internal perception of what this team could do, because externally we all heard it, right, going into the year that this team was potentially going to be on the outside looking in, but that's quite literally since night 1 not been the case for this team.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, one of the things that Kyle has emphasized, to our group, both in training camp and just coming into the season was that, we were going to be different, and we might not fit perfectly into either of sort of the 2 boxes that people like to put teams into in terms of rebuilding teams and contending teams. And so I think for us, if you look at our group, we have a group of very established and accomplished veteran players who we have to push to get the most out of each and every day, while at the same time trying to integrate young talent into the group. And I think the feeling of Kyle and the rest of our management staff was that if we were able to do that at a high level, we would be a competitive team, to say nothing of what that means standings-wise. And so for us, I think to this point in the season, at the halfway mark here, the group's done a really good job, and our ability to continue to do that on a consistent basis will obviously determine, where things land for us standings-wise.
And a big part of that obviously has been the play on the ice, but also the coaching staff, and it's relatively all new. I mean, the only holdovers were Madison Nickel, the video coach, and Andy Chiodo, the goalie coach. Otherwise, we look at the bench during our broadcast, and it's still a fresh set of faces there behind the bench. Dan Muse obviously is the man who you guys hired back in June to lead this group. What do you make of the work this year, but also more particularly when they lost 8 in a row or went winless in 8 straight, however you want to phrase it, to not have that be a point of the season where it lost the way of the team? In fact, it seemed to be almost a galvanizing point now when you look at what they've done since.
Yeah, I think when you look back at it, going through sort of those struggles as a group and coming out the other side of it is actually something that's really valuable to the group and something that really strengthens the group moving forward. As far as Dan and his staff, I think one of the things that's been most impressive about them is just, they're constantly looking for solutions, whether it's finding different ways to relay the same message, whether it's adapting the message, working with our skills coaches and skating coaches before and after practice on individual player skill sets, whatever the case may be, just finding different ways to answer the questions that come up throughout the season. And so I think they've done an excellent job, and I think the group's obviously responded really well to that.
And he's gotten some new players throughout the course of the season, whether it's recalls from Wilkes-Barre trades. I mean, the Edmonton trade in the beginning of December, and then here in the beginning of January, the trade with the Columbus Blue Jackets to bring in Egor Chinakhov. We've already seen points for him in the last couple of games, so he's starting to find his stride. But as far as that deal is concerned, was that something that came about quickly from the management perspective? Was it building over a little bit of time, to bring Chinakhov to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I mean, that was one that I think took a little bit of time to really come together. Some people may have heard Don Waddell joke that he and Kyle spent more time talking to each other about that deal than they had their own wives. But Egor, obviously, he fits sort of that age range of player that Kyle has talked about us looking to bring in. And for him, we had tons of work done on him. He projected really highly, by our internal models, which led to a ton of work done on him by our management staff and our pro scouting staff, and identifying him as a player that we wanted to target. Obviously, he has an element of speed to our lineup, and he has an elite shot and finishing ability, which he obviously showed on the breakaway there for the second goal, the game winner in Detroit. Like a lot of the other guys we brought in, was in need of sort of maybe a change of scenery and a fresh opportunity to showcase his skill set and, the potential that both we and he feel that he has.
So you bring him in, and a couple days later you make another divisional trade with Philadelphia, bringing another Russian in Egor Zamula, although his stint was never really actually a thing with Pittsburgh. Placed on waivers a couple days later, contract terminated. We just learned within the last 24 hours he signed with Columbus. Can you take us through that process? Just was this a situation of you acquired a player who you maybe knew the fate of how it was going to play out, or was it a bit of a surprise? How did that all kind of work out?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing with that deal was, it was an opportunity to give, Phil Tomasino, whose path had kind of closed off here a little bit, a fresh start and a fresh opportunity for him. And then for us, with bringing in Zamula, we kind of knew that there were two possibilities. One would be, he's another player sort of in that age range that we've talked about, who, Philadelphia had obviously felt needed some development time at the American Hockey League level, as did we. And so, he would potentially provide us some depth on our back end and have the opportunity to build his game back up. Or, we were obviously aware of, some of the rumors that had been out there publicly about, his desire to play only at the NHL level. And so we knew obviously about the possibility that we would instead terminate the contract and free up, about $1 million on our cash budget and get an additional contract slot. So that takes us from 48 to 47 contract slots. So both of those things give us a little bit of increased flexibility here moving forward to make additional moves as the season progresses.
Yeah, so that was kind of what I wanted to end this segment about, moving on from Zamula and into the contract situation. You just said it. So 47 contracts on the books, but that leaves 3 vacant spots. Are we to assume that those spots are going to stay vacant? Is there a hope or a plan to fill those here?
Yeah, I think, it's kind of uncertain. You never kind of know exactly how things are gonna play out as you move forward. Sometimes when you make deals, you end up taking on an extra contract. Sometimes when you make deals, you end up giving one up. But I think, by creating that additional slot, it just gives you additional flexibility that, depending whatever does come up as we move forward here, we're in a position where we would be able to make, really any deal that we feel makes sense for us.
Okay, so potentially the dominoes not all have fallen yet for the Pittsburgh Penguins. We'll keep our eyes on that, and we'll keep rolling along with Vukie Mpofu when we come back after this.
Here, we don't just watch the Penguins, we live every tipped puck.
Unbelievable.
Every battle.
Give me more of this.
Every new prospect.
This is a glimpse of the future.
Everything you love about the Pens, we do too.
I'm down here between the benches.
You know what that means, Pens fans?
Cheers to that.
We manifested it.
Stream the Penguins all season long on SNP 360.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, joined by Penguins Director of Hockey Operations and Legal Affairs, Vukie Mpofu, taking some time with us. I'm curious, you obviously dealing with legal affairs, dealing with contracts, two things that have come into the limelight in minor league hockey here as the turn of the new year, mainly in the ECHL. A very brief labor stoppage there between the Players Association and the league. I noticed in that time there were some players that were brought up to Wilkes-Barre from Wheeling and stuff of that nature. If you could just kind of take us through maybe a part of the management side that people don't always think of because everyone's so focused on Pittsburgh, but when you have that kind of a labor situation happening, which is not common, to try to manage it and protect your guys through the process.
Yeah, obviously, like you said, it's a bit of a unique situation. I think for us, our priority in recalling all of the players that we had on NHL or American League contracts in the East Coast League and recalling them to the American League, our real priority there was allowing the group that remained in the East Coast Hockey League to continue that solidarity between them in terms of a strike. And so we didn't want to put anyone in an awkward spot. In terms of the collective bargaining aspect of it between the PHPA and the ECHL, it was, those players were obviously able to bargain for a 20% increase almost in their salary cap this year, some additional, parameters around days off after 3 games in 3-day segments and, travel distance for back-to-back games. So, it was good to see that they were able to come to an agreement, pretty quickly and, we didn't have to miss a ton of hockey.
Yeah, that was good. And obviously Wheeling back in action, just like Wilkes-Barre towards the top of their league. But one guy who's carved his professional path all the way from the ECHL through the AHL, now here in the NHL, is Justin Brazeau. And man, what an addition he's been for the Penguins. Ditto for Parker Wotherspoon. You mentioned him earlier. And I bring those guys up because I think, Vukie, when you look at their production for what they're being paid, they would probably classify as a bargain through the first half of this season. I mean, 2-year deals at $1 million per. When you guys look into this free agent market or you look at potential guys to acquire, what are some of those intangibles? Because these weren't the biggest names on the market, but you could argue, compared to other free agent signings around the league for other teams, they may have been the best fits for what this team needed.
Yeah, I think for us, one of the things that we obviously, look for are players who project really well according to our internal models, and then, our management staff and our pro scouting staff, we'll do a ton of work on those players, and, obviously we're looking for guys who sort of check both boxes. I think in the case of Brazeau and Parker, we were able to offer both players a second year, which I think sort of underscored our commitment to what we were promising them, which was an opportunity, to potentially fill a bigger role, and the opportunity to really showcase, the ability that both players and we felt that they had. And so I think, being able to offer them that second year was obviously valuable to us in getting those deals done. As far as the actual negotiations go, I think each negotiation is a little bit different based on, the circumstance of the player, who the agent is, and whether you're dealing with an RFA or a UFA. In the case of UFAs, sometimes you don't know exactly what offers that player has out there on the market. But again, like I said, for us, we want to be a place where we can offer guys, opportunity, guys who may need a change of scenery or just feel like they're ready for a bigger role.
And those two have taken that opportunity and ran with it. Brazeau already on his way to a career year, and Wotherspoon is at a career year here through the first 41 games of the season. When we come back, World Junior Championships in the rearview mirror, but a couple of Penguins prospects in the spotlight in the fallout of that. So we'll talk about Harrison Brunicke and Will Horcoff when we wind this show down after this.
No one gets you ready for puck drop like Penguins Face Off Live. Pre-game insights, analysis, and a word straight from the coach. Penguins Face Off Live before every game on SportsNet Pittsburgh. Presented by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, the 2026 World Junior Championship in the books, and Sweden takes home the gold medal there in St. Paul, Minnesota. Both the United States and Canada fell short. Canadians, though, your Canadians, do get a bronze medal. Harrison Brunicke, Penguins prospect, a part of that Canadian team, wore the A on his sweater during the tournament, lost a couple of teeth in the process. I'm curious for one, let me ask you a couple-parter here on Harrison, because he's a big buzz name around Penguin circles these days. What'd you think of the tournament? Obviously, the move has been made to send him back to Kamloops. How did that come about, and what's your kind of hope for the rest of the way this season for his development?
Yeah, well, I thought Harrison showed himself really well in the tournament. First of all, obviously it's a disappointing result for Canada, but showed a lot of resilience, coming back and playing hard in that bronze medal game. And for Harrison, we've sort of pulled every developmental lever available to us this year to try and make the best decision on Harrison. Obviously, he got 3 games in the rookie tournament this year, followed by 4 preseason NHL games, then 9 NHL regular season games, 5 American Hockey League games, and then 9 games in the World Junior Tournament if you include the pre-tournament and the actual World Junior. So, we've been able to sort of put him in different environments, to evaluate what the best decision is with him. And, obviously this morning made the decision to loan him back to Kamloops of the Western Hockey League.
So obviously he has opportunity, I should say, to come back to Pittsburgh at the end of this season, or Wilkes-Barre at the end of this season, but you just assume he'll get a lot more minutes, situational play out there and everything with Kamloops?
Yeah, exactly. It's an opportunity for him to go out there and work on some of the things that our development staff has been emphasizing with him, and they'll obviously be out there quite a bit this year monitoring his development in anticipation of him being ready to turn pro next year.
Okay, so he's a bright spot in the Penguins' future. Another bright piece moving forward is Will Horcoff, and you guys took him in the first round, traded to get him as far as picks were concerned. He has exploded this year for the University of Michigan, one of the leading scorers in the country in NCAA hockey, but also got an opportunity to play for the Team USA squad at the World Juniors, had a couple of points. What do you make of this year for Will Horcoff and kind of where he stands in Penguins prospect status?
Yeah, well, obviously Will did an excellent job, with the start of his season playing his way on to that World Junior team in the first place. It's a really difficult tournament for an 18-year-old player, and so I think it speaks to the start that he's had. And then, I think he showed himself really well at the tournament. Had some production early on, and I think continued to make plays throughout the tournament as things went on. I think a tournament like that shows both us and Will, areas that he's doing really well in, and areas that we think he can even push further in his development in terms of just his skating and his tenacity and his engine. So, I think it's a really great experience for him, and he's obviously had a great program. Another guy where we have our development staff, watching him closely throughout his season, and he's had a great program over there in Michigan, and we're excited to see him finish the season off, the way he started it.
Well, we will keep our eye on him, and we will thank you, Vukie, for your time here. I mean, Kyle's probably going to come back in a couple of weeks, but I won't welcome him in the door so quickly. You did a pretty good job here today. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Penguins Director of Hockey Operations and Legal Affairs, Vukie Mpofu, joining us.